Hi, and welcome to the Card Hopping December Hop featuring winter themed cards using embossing powder or paste. This group of creators met over in the Handmade Happiness group. Jen Schoolcraft put this group together. Each month we bring you cards featuring inspired techniques and themes, and this is the card that I'm creating today. Here's a look at the products. Most of the products came from the Gina K Designs October box release. I have 3 stamps. The first one is called Starstruck. This is Playful Penguins, and finally Perfect Poinsettias. I'll have the coordinating dies that came in the box as well as these sentiment strip dies. So the Gina K Designs boxes are always packed full of tons of stamps, dies, and paper products that help you create cards quick and easily. I used the Tim Holtz Sparkle Stencil as well as that Pink Fresh Studio Mini Slimline die set. I have the texture paste from Lawn Fawn and Gold, Gina K Designs Champagne Embossing Powder, Ranger Bridal Tinsel Embossing Powder, Gansai Tambi Starry Watercolors. I am going to do an emboss resist technique. So I am starting with those the String of Stars is what I'm trying to say. The String of Stars stamp set. And again, I'm going to be doing some emboss resist. I treated my Canson watercolor paper with my anti-static powder, and I've inked up my stamp using the Hero Arts Unicorn White embossing powder. I just flipped over the card after I flipped it around after I stamped it on one side so that I can get the other. This is just makes it a little bit quicker rather than having to keep moving your stamp. So I got both sides of the cardstock. I added that Bridal Tinsel embossing powder. It's a sparkly, as you can see, which is why I love it. It's a sparkly clear embossing powder. So what I was looking for here is adding that texture of the stars to the background because this is a New Year's card. I'm going with more of an elegant theme, even though I have cute critters on it. So I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer and shine before I add that Gansai Tambi gold watercolor over the top of it. So it's going to give me a subtle texture in the background without taking away from the watercolor. As I mentioned, I am using that Canson watercolor paper. I'm adding some of the champagne colored watercolor after I treated my paper with a lot of water to make sure that I get some movement. Once I finish with that champagne, I do bring in one of the mid-tone golds. I'm going to dry this in between, and when I finish drying it, I think that I need just a little bit of a darker gold in the center. Because my penguins are going to be the center of attention or the star of the show on my card, I want to make sure that the center, that your eye is drawn into the center, but I also wanted to make sure that the entire background had that gold tint to it. Now, I didn't know where I was going with my card. If you watch me, you know that I don't plan my cards like some creators do. I tend to pull my products and just create on the fly. So I really thought that I might be going for an A2 size card, but as you could see, I did finish with a mini slimline. I'm going to do some stenciling using one of my favorite Tim Holtz Christmas stencils, which is that sparkle. It creates kind of that northern star sparkle, and I am going to be using my texture paste. So I do have the new Lawn Fawn Gold texture paste, and I've added it in different areas to this panel. I'm going to preface this by saying that because I did cut my panel down, you can see that more of the center of that card does not have the embossing. I am going to have to come back in and add a little bit more of that embossing paste to the stencil once I cut this panel down using my slimline dies. To color up my penguins, I did stamp them onto a piece of Copic Express It paper, which is one of my favorite papers to use when doing Copic coloring. I used Gina K Designs Jet Black Amalgam ink, and I have started with some BG markers. The image does allow you to do a multicolored scarf. As you can see, there's a pattern in there. I chose to stick with one simple color scheme. I'm using my BG markers, so I've started with a BG 78. I added the folds around the neck, and then you see where the scarves are hanging down. I did add a fold there using my darkest color, which was, again, that BG 78. I blended it with a BG 75, and then I finished my highlight with a BG 72. I tend to go over my coloring twice to get that depth and shadowing that I like, so I did do it a second time. For the body, the face, and the legs of the penguin, I used the same color combination. You'll notice in the center where his that little black portion meets his bill, I did a little bit of a flicking motion. That was just to add a little bit of texture where the tufts of the feathers would be on that nose, and I started that and my shadowing with a C9. I blended it out with a C7, and then I finished off my highlight with a C5. To add the roundness to his belly, you'll notice at the bottom there, I did add a line using that C9. It's kind of a rounded line above where the stamped image meets the legs. I blended underneath and above using the C7 marker, and then of course my highlights again are going to be the C5. For the hat and for the little earmuffs, for the pom-pom and the furry part of the earmuffs, I do some stippling. So I'm going to take my BG 75 and I'll do a stippling or a dot motion in those areas, and then I blend it out using my BG 70 marker. So that's going to give you a little bit of contrast, and because that BG 70 is kind of like the colorless blender of that particular color group, it does blend everything together nicely. When I finish with that, over on the hat, I am going to use the BG 75, 72, and 70 markers just to go a little bit lighter and to add a little bit more contrast to my image. You can see right here, I'm adding shadowing to the white portion of my penguins. I do this with my C2 marker. I blend it out with my C0, and then I finish it off with my C00. I'm going to color the shoes the same colors that I colored the scarf. So I'm going to let you watch me do a little bit of coloring, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this group. As I mentioned, we did meet over in the Handmade Happiness group. I will have that linked in the description box below. Each month, Jen Schoolcraft is the person who put this group together. She gives us a monthly prompt, and she also gives us a theme, and that is what we use to create. So it's kind of a way for us to step outside what we normally do on our channels, allows us to hop along with some of our friends and to bring you some monthly inspiration that's just a little bit different than anything else that we may have on our channel. If you're interested in joining this group, it is open to anyone, so please feel free to use the link below. Join the group if you're a YouTube creator, and we would love to have you sign up to hop along with us as well. I've colored the bill of the penguin using YG15 and not YG. I colored it using YR15 and YR18. And then I'm going to finish this off. I used the coordinating die, which again came in the box from Gina K Designs. I'm going to color the cheeks on the girl, which is on the left, using an R20. And of course, I add freckles using my gel pen. Here is the straight middle-sized piece from the Pink Fresh Studio dies. I've also cut out 3 times the branch using the Perfect Poinsettia stamp set. You'll notice that I lined my stamp up using the negative space from that die cut, and then I just go ahead and add the die piece back to the center. This is the quickest and easiest way for me to be able to stamp multiple images. Again, I'm doing some heat embossing. This paper is actually accent opaque white paper. I treated the image with my anti-static tool. I stamped it using Versamark ink, and then of course I added that champagne embossing powder and heat set it. I did that 2 more times for the other branches, and I'm going to do the same thing for this Happy New Year sentiment. So I've added that champagne embossing powder. Unfortunately, this embossing powder is no longer available. I'm so sad because it was one of my favorite embossing powders from Gina K Designs, and if I would have known, if I realized that she was getting rid of it, I probably would have bought a couple more jars because it's absolutely stunning. I'm going to use one of the sentiment strip dies again that came in that box, and I'm going to cut out my sentiment that says Happy New Year. Once I finish with that, I do bring in a two new dies. So from the Pink Fresh Studio, I used that champagne paper, the glitter paper that you can see below, and I cut out both a circle, and I used the largest die in that set, which kind of has a kind of like a braided edge around it. I did use that to cut out the largest piece, which is going to be 3 by 6. I've added some art glitter glue and some sequin tape to the back of this panel because I am attaching it to this glitter cardstock. That sequin tape, that wider tape, is going to hold it in place much better. Here's where I add a few more of the stars using that texture paste. I set this aside to dry. I ended up getting that bottom one a little thicker than what I would have liked. I'm going to glue this to a side folding mini slimline that's finished at 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. I'm going to center that, and then I'm going to add that braided circle. So that circle does have the same stitching as the largest die in the Pink Fresh Studio die set. I'm going to center this using my sentiment at the bottom. So I want to make sure that I have my sentiment where I need it before I add that circle. I haven't glued it down. I just placed it where I wanted it. Of course, I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of my penguins. I'm going to tuck those little branches in behind. That's going to bring in more of that champagne color that matches the cardstock. I'm going to add it in 3s, so I have 3 different branches because that odd number does add balance to the background. And once I do that, I'll remove the tape from the release tape from the back of the penguins, and I'll center that onto that circle. So you really don't see the stitching, but because that circle was included in that Pink Fresh Studio die set, I just went ahead and used that. I'm going to add some 1/8 inch tape, foam tape to the back of my sentiment, and then I'm going to center that where I had it on my card, and that's going to finish my card today. The next person in the hop will be linked in the description box below. I do like to add all of the participants as well, so I'll have the full list linked as well. Make sure that you stop at each participant's channel, show them some love, give them a thumbs up, and subscribe if you like their video, and do the same for me. So thank you so much for joining me today, and until next time, have a fabulous day.